you going to interview me, or am I going to interview you?
I don't care.
This is Don Gibson and Kathy Alvy, and I'm doing this to hope that the leader is working off.
Good morning, Kathy. It's nice to have you working with us today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I see you've been working hard outside, getting the grounds green.
Yeah, we planted a couple of new oak trees last week, and they seem to be doing very well. They're still nice and green, and they're getting plenty of water, so they should do very well.
And what are your future plans going to be to get?
Well, we're talking about cleaning up that area down there by the driveway and putting in either ground cover or possibly grass would be very nice. A lawn. We think that it would be not too steep, but we could mow it. And the sprinkler system is already in, so we could irrigate it all right. I think we'd have to have a little topsoil to put down before we planted the grass, but if the county can manage that, well, then I think that would be a very good option.
That'd be nice. We put a picnic area in too?
Maybe when the oak trees are bigger, we could level off a place between the two oak trees for a couple of picnic tables. In the meantime, we're thinking about having picnic tables in the front of the museum on the Main Street, Morgan Valley roadside, under those trees.
That's a good idea. Lots of summer visitors and their motorhomes coming. You
Yeah.
could attract some visitors on those roadside signs they just put in down the street
That
on the
would be
highway.
nice.
Maybe they'll look at the highway finish too, and you can have a busy.
Roadside rest at the Lower Lake Museum.
You need some of those Burma shave signs that say this way.
This is May 1st, 1997, and we will be talking to Harold Daglish, a longtime resident of Lower Lake.
I gotta adjust my hearing aids in order to be able to hear.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting right close to you, so it'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, you'll hear me, or there's no sound up here, so,
It'll be okay. We tested the sound this morning, so it's all right.
yeah.
Okay. Where were you born, Harold?
1912, January 20th,
Here in Lower Lake?
here on Lower Lake, down here on Lake Street, across the road from where my garage was, on that Wayne house.
Oh, you lived in the Wayne house at one time?
Yes,
Okay.
5 years there when I was little.
Uh-huh.
Then my father got cancer and he had to go to San Francisco and have an operation. And he lived for about 2 years after that, so I was about 8 years old when he died.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had to go on my own.
Well, now, what about your mother at that time? What did she do after your father died?
Well, before and afterwards, she moved up to the Hesse Ranch, which was her father's place, which is where you turn on 29 Highway north to go to Canocti Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived there they bought that ranch in, must have been about 1908, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They came here from Ohio to live on a ranch, as they suppose it was, which my grandmother's father gave them the deed to it. And they came out here, and he was in the, what they call Civil War. And they had this deed to this piece of land, which is Thurston Lake
Oh.
area.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came there they came here in 1906, the day before the earthquake.
Exactly.
And next morning I got woke up by the earthquake. I lived down here at a house that they had rented by the old Herndon Creek Bridge, or Coxie Creek, now that all the floater promoters moved in and changed the names of everything. So anyhow, it was Herndon Creek in those days. And there was a rock chimney in that place that fell down on everything in the house.
Is that the one that's built to the north of the road, right on the creek, the house?
Yeah, it was built north, well, the house is not there now, but
Okay.
there's a big cherry tree there. And that was where they lived when they first came here. Then they wanted to get established, and my grandmother, she wanted to go in the hotel business, so she bought a hotel here in Lower Lake. Evidently, they had wrote letters or something back and forth. They had some connections, and no one where to find it anyhow.
What was the name of the hotel that she bought?
The Eureka,
She bought the Eureka Hotel.
the Eureka Hotel from some people by the name of Lemons. And these Lemons people,
They sold the hotel to your mother.
they was
They sold the hotel to your mother,
to my grandmother.
or to your grandmother.
Yeah, Mrs. Charles Hesse.
Yes.
And my family's whole name was Hesse from my mother's side of the family that came from there. My father, he came from Scotland. He came to the United States after he had learned his trade, worked on a ship, and after they built the ship, they had to make a voyage with it in order to get all their credits for whatever they had to do, or diploma, or whatever it was. They had their tools and everything that they turned them loose, and they could go out on the world and work. And supposedly wherever they went, whether it was blacksmithing, iron work, or whether it was carpenter work.
Let's just get back to the Eureka Hotel then. Let's get back to the Eureka Hotel.
Yeah, they bought but my grandmother and grandfather bought the Eureka Hotel. There was 4 of them in the family, or 4 children in that family. There was George Hesse, who worked on the ranch, and Louise Robinson, was married later, was named Robinson.
Your mother, Ruth.
Uh,
Your mother, Ruth.
And my mother's name was Ruth. And then there was Alice Bradley and Eleanor Morgan.
So there was 5 children.
Yeah, I guess it was. There's 4 girls and one boy.
Okay.
Well, anyhow, George Hesse, he worked with my grandfather, and they took a steam pump equipment that was a very crude deal, and took horses and all to move them. And they got them into Thurston Lake, how I don't know. And they were going to farm that area there on the lower part of the east part of the lake, and have a vegetable garden to raise vegetables. they got their steam pump in and they pumped, made the garden. So then they worked all summer while they was, had the steam pump running to irrigate the garden. And it took all their time cutting wood to run the steam pump. So they decided that was for the birds, and I guess my uncle had got pretty well worn out from cutting wood, so anyhow, they sold this place to R.D. Fry from San Francisco, who had robbed the Germanian Building and Loan Association's bank, and went to Mexico and stayed a year, which in those days apparently the laws were, and he came back then and it was all legal after that. And he had the money to live happily ever after on this Thurston Lake, which he bought from them for $1,500. It was about, well, it must be about 12,000 acres in it, I guess.
Yes, yes.
I don't know. But I'm just guessing. But it was from there clear up to where the Riviera is now, up that canyon, Thurston Creek Canyon.
All that headwaters area there.
Yeah. And there's a great big cut over there in Manning Flat.
Yes.
Washed in later after they came there. In the middle of that lake, it always looks like it was brown or muddy because there's a gas well in the middle of it.
Is there really?
Live gas escaping all the time. Some guy came up here from San Francisco and he says that if that was capped, they could, if somebody had money enough to cap it all and everything, he says they could make electricity enough to furnish all of San Francisco.
Excuse me, let me make sure this is running.
Gas well.
Well, it could be capped then, huh?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, then anyhow, nobody's ever capped it. Now some people, I think there was a guy by the name of Jim Holden owned it. I don't know whether he's still alive or what. He used to come here to the fire auctions all the time, but I don't know.
Oh, Jim Heldon. Yeah, Jim Heldon. Oh, he's dead.
He's dead?
Yes, he's dead. His wife is still alive, but then.
Oh, but anyhow, she was she's related to the or what is it, Carnation Milk Company.
Oh.
I think she's a daughter to whoever owns that.
Okay, now let's get back to the Eureka Hotel and your grandmother's business.
Well, that's what this all circled around.
Okay, all right,
business
okay,
on, too.
okay.
Well, anyhow, my mother went up there to this ranch that they bought for $2,000 on the highway. It runs a mile on the highway, both sides of where you turn to go to Canocti Bay or go to
Jago Bay.
or to go to Red Hill area that way. Anyhow, they had a farmhouse and barn there on the opposite side of the road of where you now see this gas station and a lot of buildings built in the field there. Where those buildings are built in the field and the gas station was our vegetable garden when I was a kid in that area. So, and I
It's
went.
called Kids Corner.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's where your vegetable garden was.
That's where our vegetable garden was. On the opposite side, the corner where Red Hill Road comes into Highway 29, was some people with the name of Oswich lived there. They were Germans. And it was all live oak brush there. And they got goats to kill with they grubbed with a grubbing hoe, cut the brush off of the top of the stumps, and then when the sprouts come up, these goats came and ate the sprouts. That was their idea, getting rid of the stumps, which it did, it killed them. So, anyhow, they still couldn't make a living there, and they got a lot of other German guys that came there that they were teaching them the language in the United States and working the tail off of them while they were there. So anyhow, they had to do something to get some money and to buy food for the whole bunch of them. So anyhow, they went into bootlegging business. When the 18th Amendment went into effect. Well, one of them got a job as a caretaker down on the lake where the Riviera is now. They call that Wheeler Bay. And he was in this, there's a big farm ranch in there, an orchard that was just built for a private orchard. And all kinds of trees planted in it, fruit trees of various kinds that you don't see in other parts of Lake County. And this Emil Speck, he lived down there, and he had a still alongside of the wharf, and they dumped all their mash into the water and the lake. And they made the whiskey there, and then hauled it out from there. Nobody ever bothered him. He never was ever arrested or any time. And
Just looked the other way. They just looked the other way.
no, they didn't even know he was there.
Oh, I see.
Apparently, they all thought it was Oswich up on the hill, because he hauled everything up to Oswich, and then Oswich distributed it. Well, then later, he learned the language, and in the meantime, and he bought a piece of land up Red Hill Drive and planted the walnuts. And it's a good walnut orchard at the present time, owned by a man that has a real estate office right there on the turn where you go to the Canocti Bay. I went to school from there. My mother moved up there to the ranch, and we raised cows. And they decided that they wanted to raise vegetables yet, because they came from Ohio, and that's all they knew about was vegetables. And they wanted them for the hotel. So anyhow, this upper field was all green grass and all year round. Deer came out on it, lots of them. And they had about 50 head of cows that they ran on this green grass. Well, they couldn't leave it alone, so they had to run a scraper through the center of it and make a ditch through the center of this green field, all the way through the whole length of it, which was Thurston Creek, beginning and starting. And this water ran out of there and went into Thurston Lake. But they drained everything, so then there was nothing there then, and the grass all dried up. So then they had to go down, and the only place on the ranch that they could get water, where there might be some water, is where they went down to where a fence line is, where the SRS ranch is on the west side. trench and pump water up there and had to irrigate all this area that they had drained in order to get the cow feed back.
You don't fool with Mother Nature.
Yeah, so it goes to show that these people who come from the east, they don't know too much when they get to
That's
the
right.
west.
Okay, now let's get back to the Eureka Hotel. How long did they manage or have the Eureka Hotel?
Well, they had the Eureka, they ran the Eureka Hotel until 1932. It burned up. And there's some people by the name of Owens from Clear Lake Park had bought it, and they had put some insurance on it. So at least my grandmother got money enough to pay off the balance of what was due on the hotel. And they had gone out to Manakee subdivision, the other side of Austin's resort
And
home.
this is your mother,
Clear Lake.
excuse me, this is your mother and father, or a stepfather?
My grandmother and grandfather
Okay, all right.
had moved out there. And they built a house, and on the lake. They paid $150 for a lot on the lake. And they had bought about 100 lots in there altogether for, oh, they were about $100 a piece, maybe $50 a piece up on the hill in Manakee. Jack LaBrie was a butcher in Lower Lake. And when this subdivision deal came in, he went into the real estate business with these real estate guys that had came in from Los Angeles. They left a lot of bills behind when they left the area. It was about 1924, I think. I know this one guy that stayed there for a couple of years, and anyhow he left, and he didn't tell my grandmother when he left, was leaving or going to come back or anything, and he just disappeared. And she finally broke into the room, found a big trunk clear full of whiskey bottles.
Full or empty?
Uh,
Empty? Empty whiskey bottles or full whiskey bottles?
Oh, they were all empty.
Oh,
Yeah, she couldn't sell them or do anything with them, and nobody had hauled them to the dump.
okay.
And anyhow, she had lost the rent of the room for 2 years from fooling this guy. And anyhow, they left town. Down on the creek out there by the Indian Rancherie, where you know where you used to
On Cash Creek?
live out
Yes,
there.
yeah.
They had a oil derrick in the air, 123 feet, I think it was. And it was a rotary operated mechanism on it. And it turned, and they put these bits in and out that were 20 feet long or so, big long shafts. But they put them in, they drilled a well about 165 feet deep. Then they came into Lower Lake to the blacksmith shop at Curtis Tennyson. And they bought 2 sacks of anthracite coal. And they took the coal out there and dumped it in the hole, and then they run the bit down into it.
Ground it up.
And stuck it.
Yeah.
So then they couldn't get the bit out of there. So they engineered some way of getting down in there with a smaller drill or something in the hole and getting some of this coal out of there. And they fished it out out in little pieces, and they pasted it on all the letters that they pasted them on there just to show that what kind of coal they had hit a strata of.
Is that right?
So people came into the service station and asked where this coal had come from. Out there in this well. They had the story all telling you before they got there practically.
Now, who was it that did this?
The people that were buying the lots that they were,
Okay, do you have any names?
they had sold all that hillside up there in
Yes,
lots.
if you have any names of who did the oil derrick?
Who used it?
And who built the oil derrick? Do you have a name of that person that did that?
Well, it was Clear Lake Highlands Development and development and something, I don't know what they call themselves. It was the first beginning of Clear Lake Highlands anyhow.
Is this Paul Lewis? Is his name Paul Lewis?
Oh, no, he was a floater promoter, wasn't even born then.
Okay, okay.
No, he came later.
Yeah, okay.
But he
Same piece of property.
if it had been in his days, he would have been in on it, I suppose.
You bet.
Well, anyhow, he, let's see,
Sorry I interrupted you. They salted this thing with coal, and they were sending it out, trying to promote the land, right?
well, let's see, the men that were in this was O'Hay, O-H-E-A-G, they spelled it with a J in it, I don't know.
Okay.
O'Hay is the way they pronounced it. He was the guy that ran off and left the whiskey bottles behind. I can't, they slipped my mind all of a sudden. Maybe I can go back to catch them later.
Okay. So then the hotel on Main Street burned in 1932.
It burned in 1932.
32, okay.
And in the meantime, unless I had went to live in Lower Lake with Curtis Tennyson, who had the blacksmith shop, and I had batched with him and went to school between there and his place, and my grandmother's at the hotel. And I went to school in this building here for the 7th and 8th grade, and of course in second year of high school. So that was about, let's see, I got out of high school over in the other school when they built it over there in 1930, so
28, 27, 28.
27 or 28 is when I left here. And then when they closed the school up here, on this side, over on the other side, the other half of the building on the east side was still grammar school yet for a while. I don't know how long they ran in.
1935.
35 was? Yeah, that's about right, I guess. And anyhow, I worked for Curtis Tennyson as he had bought that Ruel stable building from Herb Jones, who was the undertaker. And as everybody around now knows, he lived in Lakeport. But anyhow, he was always trying to sell that, or Jones was always trying to sell that building to every stranger who come to town sell the building and the lot, the whole thing, for $1,500.
Now, that was the livery stable.
That was the livery stable and a horse barn or corral out in the back.
Now, that was right on Main Street,
It was on Main Street,
at the corner of Lake and Main.
on Lake and Main Street. And it had a well of water there that was good to drink, and everybody came there to get water. They could have sold it for a good price now. Now the water has got gasoline in it and you can't drink it.
Okay, then,
Because the gas tanks broke in the service station, leaked into the ground. Well, anyhow, we had to, when we sold the place, we had to dig the tanks out. And, I don't know what time or where should I go from there?
okay, when I got here in 1970, there was still evidence of a gas station right there on the corner of Lake and Main Street.
Yeah, well, that was about the third time that there had been a gas station there. The first building was this big two-story livery stable. They cut the corner out of it. Like, here was a corner and the street went around it. So they cut the corner out like this and put one 5-gallon gas pump in there. Then in the front door of the livery stable, they drove on through it and on out the other way. They put one gas pump on the inside. So there was a gas pump under the inside out of the way, but people could go through there.
In bad weather.
And, well, in the summertime when it was hot too.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It got hotter than Hades sometimes. And during that time when we had this place in there that way, I worked in there when I was a kid for about, he had quite a few people working for him at that time. They were making boats for people that were making new resorts on the lake, and everybody wanted a boat. And some of these guys had cabins, they wanted more boats.
Now, was that Tennyson that did that? Was that Mr. Tennyson, your stepfather, that made the boats?
No, my father didn't make the boats, it was my stepfather.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. And Curtis Tennyson was the one that had the service station.
Yes.
And was making the boats. And he had, in this building that was down Lake Street, where my garage building sits now, I had to buy that lot from my mother outright so that I'd get away from my brother and sister so they would have no interest in them. And I built this new building that I made there then after World War II. When I came back from the Army, I didn't have any, I had to start in all over again and everything. And what was I going to say?
You're talking about your building that you built.
That I bought the lot.
Yes.
Well, anyhow, my father had a building there before that originally, that he had built, and it was a blacksmith shop and cabinet shop. He did blacksmith work and made fancy chairs and tables and picture frames and anything they wanted to make out of wood, he could do it. He had the tools to do it with, which he had brought with him from Scotland to begin with. He joined the Texas Rangers when he came to, my father had joined the Texas Rangers when he came to United States. And they had sent him to Oregon on horseback. And he had to, whatever it was, his enlistment ran out, but he had got his citizenship in the United States by joining the Texas Rangers. And then he came from Lakeview, Oregon, down to California to buy some sawmills that had been advertised in a paper for sale. And when he got here, to use, in those days they didn't have money or checks or anything that they could negotiate money with, only either $20 gold pieces or he had to use some commodity or something. So he had rounded up a bunch of these wild horses up in Lakeview, Oregon, and California, I guess, and which were all running wild up there in those days. And he brought these Mustang horses down here to buy the sawmill. Well, when he got here, he found out it was all a bunch of junk and all rusty and wore out and fell to pieces. So then he bought a blacksmith shop in Kelseyville from people named Pardee. Then he moved. He kept that for a while, and they got a lot of tools there then, I guess. That's probably about why he bought it. Well, then he bought another blacksmith shop in Lower Lake where, it was where Cora's beauty shop was, or restaurant. You remember that?
It's on the south, it was on the south side of Main Street.
Yeah, on the south side, next to where Lower Lake Auto Court is
Yes.
now. Well, he bought that place, that would have been on Mitchell and
T.A.K. Mitchell.
Millsap,
Yeah,
right? Had the blacksmith shop there, and I think that is who he must have bought it from. Then he moved down Lake Street, and he bought the lot where behind this livery stable, Jones's livery stable, which was belonged to Adamson's. And he bought that lot and built the building on that he had for a blacksmith shop. And the whole town drained the Muddy Creek, they called it, and went right through there. So he built the wooden building up high enough so the water could run under. Oh, you could get up and walk underneath of it. He built it that high so he knew that the floor would be level with the county road that went by on Lake Street. And so as far as he was concerned at that time, it was all right and satisfactory. But later, when I come along, had grown up, and then I wanted to buy the lot there, I had to ditch. And I gave my mother $850 for the lot. And she insisted, oh, it was the only place you'd have to have it, and she just had to have that lot, sell that lot. So I sold it, I bought the lot anyhow. And then I went ahead, and I didn't have any more idea of what I wanted to build or do or any money to do it with. And to get the Chrysler agency back again, I had to build a building. They wouldn't give me my agency unless I built a new building in the showroom. Otherwise, they wouldn't even talk to me.
Tell me about your mother's store.
My mother's store was, she started it. It was next to the Big Oak.
On Main Street.
On Main Street. And it was next to the Big Oak building, built by Walter Vernon.
Mm-hmm.
He built it 2 feet over or 4 feet over the line. He came to my stepfather and told him he he says, I made an awful mistake, he says, and I cut all the lumber to have it made so as when we bring it down here that it will all be ready to go. But he says, I got the wrong size of lot, and the building is bigger than the lot is. They didn't tell us that the building also was 15 feet wider on the west side also, that he stole off of Mrs. Millsap.
But anyway,
So that was the first beginning of learning things in Lower Lake.
yeah. So her first store was on Main Street, and what did she carry there? What kind of merchandise? Was this a general store?
She started the store on $35. She rented the store from my stepfather, which she hadn't married him at that time. And that was 1928. And she made sandwiches and sold ice cream and bread, I guess, tobacco, cigarettes, and things of that sort.
And she traded to the Native Americans. She traded
Did we?
food for baskets and whatever.
Oh, then later on, as the time went along, the kids came in and wanted to buy the candy and ice cream and various things like that. And she had set a price so much for an arrowhead or something like that. They had no money. And so she took arrowheads for some different ones she looked at and decided what she'd give them for so many arrowheads for so many pieces of candy. And that was the way candy in those days sold in single pieces that they could buy for 1 cent or 5 cents or 10 cents or whatever it was. But those was getting pretty high for most of them until one to afford. So chewing gum, bubble gum, and that kind of things. Then she rented it for about 2 or 3 years, and then my stepfather, he rented the place again to Rex Paddock, which he had a bakery in there, as he sold the bakery goods, but he had a bakery down on Lake Street behind where Annie Morrill lives now, on the creek. And anyhow, he had run the bakery for 2 or 3 years, and then he quit that. And then my mother again ran the store, and she put in canned goods and different things of that sort, like a regular
Regular market.
uh,
Regular market.
yeah, more like a regular market down here. And she sold notions and items of various kinds, but it seemed to be she'd have a little of this and a little of that, so because there wasn't a big amount of people to draw from to buy the things, so she could only buy 2 or 3 or half a dozen of them to be able to sell them and get rid of them. So, and make it, keep them moving. But that was why she had came from the ranch where my grandfather was up there, because he'd gone blind and he couldn't see very good, and had to have an operation for cataracts. And then when he came back, ranch about a year, and then he was getting old enough then that he wasn't able to work on a ranch anymore. In those days, they had to travel by horse and wagon. They didn't have no cars in those days. My father was the only one who had a car in that place. He had a 1906 Cadillac.
Is that right?
It was one cylinder.
Oh, my goodness.
And then later, when they got cars, Dr. Weavor had a Model T Ford, and Henry Henderland had a four-cylinder Cadillac. It was 1912, a four-cylinder Cadillac. And they used that thing for years. I don't know. He lived out in Spruce Grove area, up there by Coxey's. And
I think you're getting tired, Harold.
yeah, I guess.
I think we'll call it a day.
Yeah,
And I sure thank you for coming and talking to me.
yeah.
This is wonderful. We got you on tape.
Well, got something started on the thing, and then I can think up some more things that
Okay, all right,
when I get my mind to going
all
on.
right, very good. I'd like for you to tell me the next time about what you remember about Main Street, where the buildings were on Main Street. And I've got a little map that I can.
Well, I got some pictures yet that I didn't get burned up.
Will you bring those in another time? And
Yeah, so
I'm gonna sit still. I'm gonna turn the
yeah.
thing off.